Ever get the feeling that things just don't add up? Like the world's gone a little crazy.
Yeah, between crazy prices and politicians making promises they can't keep, it's enough to make anyone's head spin.
Exactly. So what if there's a way to cut through all the noise and see what's really going on in the economy?
Well, that's what we're diving into today.
That's right. We're cracking open Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt.
A classic. And it's all about exposing those sneaky economic myths we all fall for.
And that's what we do here on Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go, making these complex ideas clear, easy to understand, and all with a little help from AI.
So get ready for a deep dive into some timeless wisdom with Hazlitt as our guide.
So what makes this book so special? What's the big takeaway?
Well, Hazlitt was brilliant at keeping things simple without oversimplifying. He realized that most economic fallacies come from one basic problem.
Yeah, what's that?
We tend to focus on the immediate, obvious effects of a policy and completely ignore the long-term consequences for everyone.
So it's like seeing the splash of a rock hitting a pond, but completely missing the ripples that spread out afterwards.
Exactly. And he illustrates this perfectly with the broken window fallacy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's this broken window all about?
So imagine a shopkeeper whose window gets smashed. Someone might say, hey, at least it's good for the glazier. He gets a job replacing it.
Yeah, I can see that, but I bet there's more to this story.
There is. See, now the shopkeeper has less money to spend on other things, like a new suit from the tailor. The glazier might benefit, but the tailor loses out.
Ah, so it's not really creating anything new, just shifting things around.
Right, it's a zero-sum game. No new wealth, just a transfer.
This reminds me of the argument that natural disasters can actually be good for the economy because of all the rebuilding afterwards.
Right, the blessings of destruction myth. While there's a burst of activity, destruction itself always means losing something valuable. Plus, rebuilding takes resources, which are often depleted by the disaster in the first place.
So instead of a net gain, it's more like a really expensive reshuffling.
Exactly. It's like saying breaking your leg is good for your health because you'll become a pro at using crutches.
Ouch. That makes the point pretty clear. It's so easy to focus on the visible benefits and miss all the hidden costs. And this brings us to another common fallacy. The idea that government spending on public works is a guaranteed way to boost the economy.
The problem is, this spending isn't free. It has to come from somewhere. Taxes, usually.
Meaning taxpayers could use that money to invest, save, or spend in ways they thought were best, not how the government decided.
Exactly. It's another case of shifting resources, not creating them. And it raises questions about efficiency, too. Are these government projects really the most productive way to use that money?
It makes you wonder, and this ties into another debate that's been going on forever. The fear that machines and technology are going to steal all our jobs.
Ugh. The curse of machinery fallacy. Hazlitt makes the point that while technology might displace workers in certain tasks, it also boosts productivity, making things cheaper, wages higher, and creating whole new industries we couldn't have imagined before.
Like all the jobs that exist today because of computers and the internet. A few decades ago, those jobs didn't even exist.
Exactly. It's not as simple as machines taking jobs. It's about how technology changes the entire economic landscape.
It's a whole new playing field. Which brings us to those spread the work schemes. The idea that if we all just worked a little less, there would be more jobs to go around.
A classic example of assuming the pie is fixed instead of something that can grow. These schemes act like there's only a limited amount of work to be done. But by limiting production, we're actually lowering everyone's living standards. People can't work as much as they want, and we can't create as much wealth as we could.
So the focus should be on making the pie bigger, not just slicing it differently. This also makes me think about those policies that try to push exports to make a nation richer.
The drive for exports fallacy. Hazlitt points out that exports are ultimately paid for with imports. Trying to artificially boost exports can actually end up costing the exporting country in the long run.
It's like trying to get rich by selling things for less than it costs to make them. It just doesn't add up.
You got it. Not a sustainable strategy. And speaking of sustainability, that brings us to another big misconception. The idea that propping up prices in certain industries is actually good for the economy.
Like those parity price programs designed to help farmers by guaranteeing them a certain price for their crops.
Right. Hazlitt argues these actually distort the market and hurt everyone, including consumers who end up paying more.
So another case of good intentions leading to unintended consequences. This is really making me question so much of what I thought I knew about economics. It's like looking at the world through a completely new lens.
That's the power of Hazlitt's work. It forces us to challenge our assumptions and think critically about the long-term effects of economic policies.
It's incredibly insightful, and I'm already eager to dive deeper into Hazlitt's arguments. But before we do, let's take a quick break. We're back and ready to continue our deep dive into Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's really eye-opening to see all these hidden costs in what we think are well-meaning policies.
It's amazing how Hazlitt connects all these different fallacies. There's a common thread running through all of them.
You mean that tendency to fixate on the immediate effects while missing the bigger long-term consequences?
Exactly. It's like looking at a tiny piece of a puzzle and thinking you understand the whole picture.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we develop that economic X-ray vision to see the hidden costs?
Hazlitt gives us a great tool. Think critically, question everything, and always ask who benefits and who pays the price.
It's realizing that every economic policy creates winners and losers. Some we see and some we don't.
Absolutely. The economy isn't static. It's this complex web of actions and reactions. And speaking of, that brings us to another common fallacy. Trying to save failing industries with things like tariffs and subsidies.
The saving the X industry fallacy. Hazlitt argues these actually mess up the natural flow of resources, leading to inefficiencies and hurting the whole economy.
You got it. But some people say we need to protect certain industries for things like national security or to save jobs.
Right, I've heard those arguments. What does Hazlitt say about that?
He acknowledges those concerns but says they're often exaggerated. Protecting industries that aren't efficient ultimately makes the whole economy weaker and less able to adapt in the long run.
So it's a temporary fix that creates even bigger problems down the road.
Exactly. Trying to keep a sinking ship afloat by patching holes with duct tape won't hold forever. This is giving me a whole new perspective on how to analyze economic policies. It's about looking beyond the headlines and really thinking about the long-term consequences for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And understanding that economic progress comes from things like innovation, competition, and letting resources go where they're most productive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Which actually reminds me of another fallacy Hazlitt addresses. The idea that credit programs for specific groups, like farmers, are some kind of economic stimulus.
The credit diverts production fallacy. So Hazlitt argues that government credit doesn't actually create new capital. It just diverts existing capital from more efficient borrowers to less efficient ones.
Exactly. It's not making the pie bigger. It's just cutting it up differently in a way that could actually hinder growth.
Makes you think.
Uh-huh.
This all goes back to Hazlitt's central point. Good economic thinking means looking at the long-term consequences for everyone, not just the short-term benefits for a select few.
It's about realizing that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Every economic choice has trade-offs and unintended consequences.
It's about giving ourselves the tools to analyze those trade-offs and make decisions that lead to real prosperity for everyone.
I like that. This conversation has been fantastic so far, uncovering all these hidden fallacies that shape our economic thinking. But there's another point I'd love to get your take on. Hazlitt's emphasis on individual freedom and responsibility. What are your thoughts on that?
I find that fascinating. Hazlitt strongly believes that economic freedom and individual liberty are two sides of the same coin. He argues that when people are free to make their own choices, chase their own goals, and reap the rewards of their work, the whole economy thrives.
It's about unleashing human ingenuity and letting individuals forge their own paths to success.
Absolutely. And it's about realizing that government intervention, while sometimes necessary, should be limited to creating a framework that encourages competition, innovation, and personal responsibility.
Right on. That's a key point Hazlitt makes. This really resonates with me. It's about empowering people, not restricting them, trusting them to make good choices for themselves and for society as a whole.
And ultimately, that's what Economics in One Lesson is all about. Giving individuals the tools to think critically, to question assumptions, and to understand the economic forces that shape their lives.
Perfectly put. This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening, revealing the hidden costs of those common economic myths and giving us tools to make smarter choices.
Hazlitt reminds us that economic principles aren't just some abstract theories. They have real-world consequences that affect each and every one of us.
It's a call to action, to have real conversations, to challenge the status quo, and to push for policies that truly benefit everyone. What an amazing exploration.
And we're back. It's amazing how much we've unpacked from just Economics in One Lesson.
Right. It's a small book, but packed with insights.
That's why it's a classic, I guess. Hazlitt's writing, it reminds me of a surgeon.
A surgeon.
Yeah, he dissects these complex economic arguments so precisely, exposing the flawed logic underneath.
I see what you mean. It's like he gives us this mental scalpel to cut through all the confusion and see what's really going on.
Exactly. And he does it all so clearly and with a touch of humor. Never gets bogged down in jargon or overly complicated theories.
He uses these everyday examples, stories you can relate to. Makes it so much easier to understand.
It feels like you're having a conversation with him, not sitting through a lecture.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted to share this book with everyone today. It's such a valuable tool, helps you understand those economic forces shaping our world.
And to make informed decisions about the policies that impact our lives, too.
It's about empowering ourselves, to be critical thinkers, to see through the empty rhetoric, and to push for solutions that actually work for everybody.
So if you're interested in learning more and really digging into these economic principles, we highly recommend checking out Economics in One Lesson. You can find a link in the show notes.
It will challenge you to think differently, broaden your understanding, and give you the tools to navigate this complex economic landscape we live in.
And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go and share this episode with someone who might find it useful.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive, exploring new ideas and expanding our understanding of the world.
Until then, keep those minds mindful.